Well, good to see you after your 44-day quest,
Good to be
uh,
seen.
Way of Nature retreat.
Yeah.
And we got to hang out together quite a bit because I would come in once a week. Of course,
Mhm.
we spent some time refining the process together. Um, anyway, good to have you back. You just came out a couple of days ago.
Yeah, yeah, and quite an adjustment it is
Yep.
coming back out.
This, by the way, is Pat Parker-Roach from Massachusetts, uh, in charge of building out the Way of Nature um, New England area in cooperation with some other folks that are doing work in places like Vermont and Maine and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So hopefully this 44 days will really benefit that process quite a bit.
I hope it does. That would be icing on the cake
Yes.
because it's benefited me as a human being immensely.
So it's been good.
It's been excellent. You mentioned coming out every week. Those hours that we spent uh, are just precious to me, and they'll be with me forever.
Thank you.
Um, you're in nature, you're by yourself, and layers start peeling off, and you get to places where you've never been before.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to get past those is your teachings and insights just help peel off more layers all the way along, all the way through.
Thank you. I was lucky enough to do this at the Sacred Land Sanctuary, which is here in the town of Kristen. We're right now at my house, which also serves as the Way of Nature's office here in Kristen. And we have this beautiful view of sacred Mount Blanca in the background.
Yeah.
This is one of the great sacred mountains of the American continent of Turtle Island.
Oh.
And this is the San Luis Valley. You can see it spreading out to the west. And
Spectacular.
then to the east, we can't see it from here. We have the Sangre de Cristo mountain range.
Mm.
But and then where you did your solo is just a mile or a couple of miles to the north.
Right.
So it's a very special area. And we began doing, I began putting people out on long retreats probably about 30 years ago. And it's month-long and later on up to 3-month-long retreats.
Mm.
And the beauty of doing the longer ones, as you know, are we have the Nature Quest program, which was an early program about a week long, combining awareness training and solitude in nature, and then integration time coming out and sharing time. Then we developed the longer program, which is a week of solitude and 6 days of training and integration after the period of what we now call AllOne time, because obviously you're not alone when you're out there in nature.
No, no.
You're solitary from other humans,
Exactly.
except for me. But
I made a lot of friends.
yes,
out in nature.
squirrels, eagles,
trees, rocks, streams,
elements.
Yeah.
So the program began slowly, and now quite a few people have been through at least a month-long solo. A few have done the 3-month retreat, not very many. I did my own first 28-day when I was about 16.
Wow.
In the Olympic Mountains in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
I'd spent the summer as a fisherman in Alaska, so I gave myself a gift of doing a 28-day in the Olympics after that. And it was so powerful, I decided that as I began to bring out the Way of Nature process, that experience became kind of a foundation for building out the program. And then I began to do added into longer retreats. A 28-day, of course, honors the lunar cycle. 44-day honors the more the cosmic and solar cycles. So it's a way of honoring the yin and yang aspects. And then I realized that there'd be an opportunity during the longer one, the 44-day, to bring in a classical vision quest with no food or very little water, no sleep,
Mm-hmm.
no shelter, just a blanket or a sleeping bag wrapped around you, and continuous prayer, meditation, and ceremony
Mm-hmm.
for 3 or 4 days. So as you did, there was one during the full moon and one during the dark of the moon,
Yes.
and those became kind of center points for the 44 day.
Mm-hmm.
And the 28th day, you just do one,
Huh.
and depending on the nature of the lunar cycles at a particular time. But I found that the longer retreats allowed people to take the way of nature process, go deeper and deeper and deeper with the 12 principles and with the very deep connection, as you know, way of nature is about outer nature connection to family of life, really having an experience of being profoundly connected to the big family of life,
Mm-hmm.
the trees, the elements, the stones, the plants, the animals, and ultimately becoming profoundly connected to your home environment, your home ecosystem. And then the inner nature is addressed with all the blockages, the obscurations that stand in the way of the emotional, a clear emotional state and a clear mental state. And an energy body that's been purified and refined, a capacity to move that's enhanced, and a capacity to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, and to smell that's refined, refined, and refined to allow you to make deep connections to both outer nature and to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can follow all those experiences of these forms back into the base awareness of your true nature. And that's the third nature. So outer nature, inner nature, and true nature. And refining the inner nature to be a clear avenue to both that connection to the outer ecosystem and to following it back into the liberated essence of your being. Is the invitation that the way of nature gives to become involved with it. Whether it's a short program like a renewal program or a bit longer one like a nature quest or a long one like our basic sacred passage. And then for those who want to go deep, 28-day, 44-day, and 3-month long programs are fantastic. So you were lucky enough to be part of that ongoing family.
I feel blessed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, what would you share about it that might be helpful to our folks, friends that are listening to this on YouTube and as a podcast?
Sure. The inner, outer, inner, and true nature. I did. It played out in a different order for me. I started out with more the inner nature. I found
Working with the shadows and the obscurations.
exactly for some reason, just old blockages, things from my past, just started coming up, and I said, well, if that's what's happening, let's go with it. And um, and with your guidance, I was able to start pushing things aside. Uh, I haven't remembered dreams in years and years and years, and all of a sudden, I'm having dreams of parts of my life that were just obscured to me. I haven't
Amazing.
thought about in forever. And then I'll expose. I had some issues with abuse as a child and the like, and I had pushed all of that behind me.
Try to suppress it or
Yeah,
put it out of your consciousness.
in my early youth, joining the Navy, I'd use alcohol and things like that to just
Get rid of
not
it.
think of it, and that didn't work after a while, and I realized it. But I haven't thought about it. I just put it all aside, and all of a sudden, it all started coming back.
And some of it in the dream time.
Yeah, yeah, and it started bringing it up, and I'd remember it, and then I'd process it in the daytime.
Mm.
And one of the true blessings of that part of it was I came to see things more clearly.
Yeah.
You know, paths into my inner truths? Well, I didn't like some of those, uh, but I faced them and saw that I had a hand in things too, and I started realizing that people who I'd blamed or not forgiven, they had their reasons too. They had their shadows, and I think maybe it's not all gone, but I've put a lot of that to bed, and what a gift. Part of that whole upbringing, I've often said that I had the tears slapped out of me in my teens,
Mm.
physically and through shame, and I sobbed 4 times
Mm.
during that period, and I have been searching for my tears for years. You could ask family and friends,
Yeah.
and what a blessing, what a gift,
Yeah.
what a relief, and the opening of the heart that has come with that, and compassion through the practices. I've done shorter, week long.
Yeah, we've. I
And
knew took a lot of background before this, so
yeah, so but I've never
preparation.
been able to get to that kind of
It
level.
takes a little time to really go deep.
So that was a real blessing, and I still and I've got the tools now to process
Yeah,
this
and continue.
as things will bubble up. I'm sure they will in the future. And so, two huge gifts. And then, as that started getting processed, then I moved more towards the outer nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think I'd talk at all during my time out
Mm.
there, other when I'd see you. But I found out I was having a lot of conversations with nature out
Yeah.
there. I couldn't pass some of my old friends.
Yeah.
There's a couple ponderosas that come to mind, and
These are beautiful trees, beautiful big orange bark trees.
Through your teachings and working with all of my senses and the connection sequences and the like, I had some pathways that I'll share that there was times when I would do. I love the reciprocal breathing that I would do with the ponderosas, and in the middle of that, I'd feel myself dissolving,
Mm.
and the tree dissolving, and we becoming one in the communion, and it got to a point where I could just feel nature around me. It was
Yeah.
this sensation, and I think you used the word unity. I started becoming one with my environment there,
Mm-hmm.
and that was kind of a new and unique experience
And then
for
you
me.
probably had the experience when that happened with a lot of things in your circle, your sacred circle.
Yeah,
Then you had the experience of being part of the sacred circle, or one of
absolutely. And that, and along with some things out of my past through sacred passages and the like that I've done in the past, I've had some cutting through to clarity, and I can see pathways back. So, and now to integrate that feeling and the like with the inner nature work that I was doing, um, I just feel like a better human being for it.
them.
I've got pathways into working with this in the future, and for the rest of my life, these tools will be useful.
I was uh, delighted to hear you feel more energized than you have in years. You know.
I feel like a young man. I'm 72 years old, and I haven't felt like this, and I can't remember how long. Physical strength, it has increased just from doing practices. I think you'd mentioned releasing those spiritual and intellectual blockages and all that
Yep.
ego stuff and the like frees up energy to be
Right.
used in a physical
A lot
sense.
of energy gets bound by our blockages.
Yeah.
And if we don't even know what those blockages are because we're suppressing them,
Yeah.
it's bound energy we're not even aware
Yeah. I just feel young and vibrant
of.
right now. um, and I'm stronger. You know, I can do things that were outside of my capability before. I'm happy. Um, I miss being out there in nature, but I'm really excited to see my family.
Well, this evening you've got this, of course.
Oh my gosh. Over your shoulder, John, there's a sunset going on.
Right.
It's just.
Do you want to move the camera, Brad? If we can, so we can share it with our friends. This is home base for the Way of Nature in Colorado. We're blessed with these beautiful sunsets almost every evening, and the spaciousness of this environment and the sacredness.
When I use the words like sacred and spiritual, this kind of view, this touches the sacred and the spirit in me.
Yeah.
I've heard you say that when you did your first solo as a young man, you came back and said you found your church.
On my first quest.
Yeah. I have that sense in being close to nature like this. So I'm really excited about reintegrating this work with my family and my associates and help bringing it to other people.
Beautiful. One thing might be worth mentioning, that it's a fairly new part of the Way of Nature. We actually began with, I started to bring through a series of principles. We call them now the 12 Principles of Natural Liberation. And those 12 principles became the foundation for a pathway that's intercultural, interfaith, and based upon the common ground of many different cultures and traditions. So you can practice it as a Christian, as a Buddhist, as a Hindu, as a Muslim, as a Taoist, whatever your pathway might be. It integrates perfectly. So that became kind of a backbone of the Way of Nature process and training. And then more recently, we've been doing a 4-year training, which began with several years of working with blockages and obscurations and shadow aspects. And I developed 7 techniques for transformation, starting with freeing the energy up and finally ending up with the capacity to rest in source and have the blockages self-liberate in the open awareness of recognition.
Part of those trainings is what helped me get through a lot of the blockages that I had.
Yeah. What we've done with this blockage aspect, and you were working with us out there, is identifying where the blockages exist in the physical form, in the physical body. Where are they hiding out in the energy body, the chakras, the meridians, and where are they tucked away in our emotions, in the emotional body? It's part of our kind of our inheritance of being. And where are they in the mental patterns and frameworks which we habitually revisit again and again as we relive our story over and over again? I'm sure you must have explored that one a bit.
I tell you, I played hide and seek with a lot of my ego and all those blockages, and it would shift. I got you cornered. Let's shift, and they go hiding someplace else.
And then you find that the blockages that might be in your mental pattern are also tucked away in your emotional body. And then maybe there's a place in the meridians or your chakras where they're hiding out. And then maybe there's a physical location in the body. For example, fear is often hiding out in the kidneys and the bladder. Anger is often hiding out in the liver and the gallbladder. And so you begin to find these blockage areas within the physical body. So there's a matrix of blockage that I began to uncover and then share with my students. And then we learned that even there's more beyond even the mental patterns, because we have the ancestral patterns that we're constantly carrying with us from family and background. There's even some evidence that some of these patterns are passed through the DNA complex. and you inherit these patterns. And then, of course, there's the impact of cultural and social conditioning, which are these days especially having a massive impact on so many of us. And then finally, there are the karmic traces that you carry through from one lifetime to another. So we take these 7 techniques, we apply them to a particular issue like anger or fear, and we go through all these 7 levels of where the blockages hang out, and liberate, refine, refine, refine. And when they're liberated, freedom, a free and open state replaces the blockage and the pain.
Yeah.
So the end result is the energy is freed up, the mind is freed up from its obscurations, and the capacity to return to source then begins to authentically open. It's hard to return to source if you're filled with pain, blockages, and obscurations. So that's the reason at the end to bring in this new cycle of teachings, because it's an important part of the picture. And you were working on that pretty deeply for particularly the first
first half perhaps,
maybe the first 3 weeks.
Yeah. And then things shifted before I went into the second vision quest. And the other benefit or aspect of it was the freeing up the time to refine and work on my practices, on my Tai Chis and my Qigongs, and the myriad of, I sat and wrote down all of the various practices that I've learned from you over the years, and I filled an A4 size piece of paper just with one-liners.
I have to tell you, Pat, he showed me one of his journals from this retreat, and it's essentially a book about yay thick, just filled with notes and commentaries and cherries.
And maybe this conversation should happen after I transcribe that again, because there's so much in the beginning that I have forgotten, and I'm looking forward to revisiting a lot of the territory. But going deeper into those practices, if I do Tai Chi Chuan, I focus now on I want to be relaxed, I want to be totally present, and I want to work on my balance and movement. That's improved immensely, and I could use nature to help me do that. If I find myself, I'm not focusing, let me listen to the stream, and brings me right back into the present.
Beautiful.
And that happened with many of the practices, and I think what happens is, as those get better, it helps me with inner, outer, and pathways into
because
true nature.
ultimately outer nature, inner nature, and true nature all integrate into one nature, which is the ultimate. I'd say the ultimate nature that embraces both the outer display of outer and inner nature, and the truth of the absolute pure consciousness and awareness lays as the foundation of our being.
Yeah, and I think I probably understood it at some level all along, but being able to work with it without any pressures of time or anything like that is the beautiful way you've integrated things. Everything supports everything else. The way all the practices, the Gaia flow.
Kind of a positive matrix.
Exactly. Yeah. And, so some of the simplest and most profound of the Qigongs, like the bear sequences, that builds onto the Gaia flow, that builds onto the Tai Chis and all the other Qigongs. It all works together, and it all leads to source. Yeah. And so there's many pathways that you can go through.
Beautiful.
That
part of the strategy, by the way, when this was coming together for me, I realized at a certain point, even though I didn't consciously sit down to design this, it came through a series of insights that came from doing lots of passages, doing lots of deep immersions in the three natures, and having the gift of some amazing human teachers who are well established in source,
Mm-hmm.
and the transmissions that came from the gift of being in their presence. And so the interesting thing was the training process, or the way of nature process, came together piece by piece without any design in mind,
Mm-hmm.
for it to be an integrated set of teachings that would completely integrate and
Yeah.
support each other aspect.
Yeah.
But it turned out, suddenly I woke up one day and, wow, this is an entire system. It's totally integrated.
Yeah.
But I did not think it out like that. It just happened naturally.
I think you're a natural born systems thinker, John.
It naturally unfolded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one of the gifts, I guess I, again, intuitively knew it from my upbringing. I was raised Catholic, was an altar boy and all that. Uh, the power of ritual and ceremony.
Yeah.
Uh, it became clear to me. And
You did a lot of which ceremony?
um, you know, I fell in love with the 11 direction ceremony. And I love the fact that, you know, I don't think I'd want to do it with other people now. It became a very personal thing to me.
Yeah.
Um, it became my morning prayers,
Beautiful.
basically. You know, so I talk to the East, and you know, what's awakening in me now, and what's driving me.
Yeah. East,
today.
by the way, is we identify with spiritual awakening and creative arising of the fresh and the new.
And this feeling, this life force evolving in me, and like I said, I haven't cried in years, so I talk to the South, where there's, you know, where I'm thinking of it as an opening of the heart and vitality in my life, and what am I going to do with that, and today, and so I'd have the conversation
Fantastic.
with that energy, and the Tonglen part of it, the taking in of the
Suffering.
the sufferings of whoever beings are in that particular direction, and offering compassion back.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I evolved it was the compassion back is to them, but I go back to the principles. And I make a commitment to you in that direction to stay on the path of spiritual warriorship and address the issues that I have within my power, but do it with an open heart and compassion for all involved.
Beautiful. So you integrated the 12 principles.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
You've integrated, yeah.
Beautiful.
And so, so I had a little statue of a Buddha that my wife gave me to bring with me, that I put in my circle where I did my practices. And I'd always stop and say, thank you for your example. How do you walk in the world as a compassionate human being? And it's part of the tempering that you're guiding me through right now, coming out, is as you go through the world, people are going to do things, but can you follow that example set by Jesus, Buddha, all the great teachers of doing it, not accepting it, but not accepting the wrongdoing, but address it in a way that you don't have hatred in your heart, that you're compassionate to all involved.
Yeah.
Those are gifts.
Yeah. And also in a time of climate change, with floods, droughts, drying up the reservoirs all over the western U.S., massive hurricanes and cyclones and hurricanes slamming into Florida and the south of America, massive tornadoes unfolding in the Midwest, huge floods hitting other parts of the country like the Mississippi area, and just on and on. And then, of course, abroad, Pakistan is still underwater. And climate change, even for those that deny its reality, is becoming so massive that it's becoming undeniable for almost all of us. And a lot of that is because we've lost our connection to nature and to the earth.
Yeah.
And this process happens to hold the key to reconnection. The way of nature process literally condenses the keys to the kingdom of nature, connectivity of outer nature, inner nature, and true nature.
Yeah.
If we simply take a little time set aside to engage that, and as Brad was saying earlier today, that re-engagement with outer nature and the deep true nature of ourselves is a tremendously joyful experience. Why not do that? Why not engage that? Because it brings joy and happiness, replaces the pain body of suffering that we are habitually addicted to with the body of one's true essence, which is a naturally joyful state. So why not engage in that way? So I like to think that the way of nature holds some very profound keys that could be part of the healing of the relationship between our species and the rest of life and Gaia.
Absolutely. And I like the gentle approach of it, where if you just go out there with anger in your heart and like, it's just going to build walls,
Right.
and all the guilt and stuff that you might want to project on others is just going to build up defensiveness, and it's not going to solve any problems. But going back to ritual and ceremony and the like, I'd find myself saying, I'm going to ask this tree if I have permission to share breath with it. I'll take in its oxygen, I'll give the tree back the carbon
And
dioxide.
that's a basic principle for virtually all of our practices with nature, is that we make a connection that has permission to deepen that connection.
So, if you were to ask me, do I think the tree has sentience enough to make that conscious decision to grant permission? In my heart of hearts, I don't know. That's fine. But I'm going to accept the premise that it does. But I don't think it really matters. I think it's going through the process of having enough respect for nature to do the ritual of asking starts building a habit in me that if I'm going to make a decision that involves nature, decision with anything, stop and think, what's the implication of it?
Yep.
Would it give me permission if it could, or is it giving me permission? It really, it's like the concept of God for me. If I won't know until I'm past, what the answer to these questions are, but I'll accept the premise that there is something. And but the ritual, the practice of taking that moment and saying, what's the implication of my actions? Is this living thing okay with me grabbing a hold of it?
Exactly. So it shows real respect for the other, for all the beings of nature.
Exactly.
And I think you said one of the things I thought was really beautiful, that you wanted to engage the ceremony as something that was your ceremony, that you would do on your own, and be a partner with nature through the ceremony. When that ceremony came through in a passage I did maybe 40 years ago, the original intent that I was given was that this is not a ceremony, this is a ceremony to allow each individual to make it their own, to own it, to make it theirs. And whatever it took for them to do that, that was fine. They could modify or make some changes if they needed to. This was a template for really owning the ceremony. So your power of intent could be completely invested in doing it. And through that, you establish an authentic connection, a respectful relationship to nature.
Yeah.
And also in our culture these days, we do have personal prayer, personal meditation practice, but it's very rare for people to actually take on ceremony themselves. They must rely on a priest or a medicine person or some kind of authority. Maybe bring in a indigenous elder to lead it, or maybe go to a priest of some sort, and depend on them to create the ceremony or lead you through it. Whereas in our case, we almost never do the ceremony as a group. We make exceptions for weddings, funerals, baptisms, things like that. But for the most part, what I say during a training is, we're not going to do this as a group. You're going to do this individually, and you're going to bring your own power of intent to the ceremony, bring it out into nature, and then you will discover yourself the authentic relationship that is established by doing this ceremony.
Yeah.
We used that ceremony, by the way, when 2012 came, that big event, the conclusion of that big cosmic cycle, galactic cycle that the Mayans identified.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
A lot of people are thinking, oh, it's the end of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
But actually, the Mayans said, no, it's the end of one big, gigantic cycle. But it's the beginning of a brand new, fresh one.
Yeah.
So a small group of us gathered, including some leaders in the Academy for Systems Change that I'm one of the founders of.
Mm-hmm.
We gathered in Yucatan, Peter Senge and Gadu Madraso, and about between 50 and 60 elders from all over the world, different religions, different traditions.
Mm-hmm.
We used that ceremony as the basic common ground ceremony that allowed us to be unified in the ceremonial process, to usher in the new cycle of 25,000 years of the Mayan calendar.
Nice.
And a lot of people don't know that, but that was one of the most significant ceremonies that happened during that amazing time in December of 2012. So ceremony can be immensely powerful when it's being applied for your personal growth and evolution, establishing what you were sharing, deep respect and connection to nature, or whether it's being utilized as a means for coming together as a common ground approach to universal concerns about honoring major natural cycles.
And just for clarity, it was that 11 direction ceremony that I am tailoring to myself is the one I like. It's my private one. I do find power in ceremony with others too. I teach this kind of thing, and there's power in that too. It's just that's my little personal one.
Nice.
That's my morning prayer.
Nice.
And just so you know, one of the number one benefits that I found is every week I got to have a conversation just like this with this man. To be able to talk about these issues one-on-one.
Well, it's getting a little cool, and we probably should get ready for going over for that preview.
I got out of my solo just in time. The weather shifted.
Yeah, you had beautiful weather. Warm, sunny, a little bit of storm and rain here and there, but basically really beautiful, supportive.
I did a lot of journaling, and every day it would start off another beautiful day in paradise. It was just every day. So
you didn't suffer a whole lot?
No, I had one or two chilly nights when I was out on the Vision Quest. But,
let me add one thing about what you've done, what you've just accomplished. This is a very deep example of what we call the 6 empowerments of the way of nature. The first empowerment is the power of the already liberated, perfectly realized essence of yourself, your true nature.
Yep.
The second power is the power of authentic teachings to help remove the complexity and the obscurations that lay over that true nature. Mm-hmm. The third empowerment is the power of direct transmission from human teachers and from nature itself. Because sometimes nature will provide a very high level teacher transmission that is powerful and profound indeed. A fourth element is doing this in a sacred place in nature. You get to do this in a sacred land sanctuary, which many have identified. Many indigenous peoples like the Kogi have come here and identified this area up here at the Sacred Land Sanctuary as one of the premier sacred sites in Turtle Island, North America. Then the next is the power of solitude, dropping out of being part of human culture for a while and reconnecting to the family of all life in that sacred place, and not being distracted by human news, media, various concerns of family, friends, and enemies, and so on. And then finally the power of spiritual community itself, which can be a tremendous support on the path to liberation. It can also be a source of problems if that community has not been committed to the path of realization. But if it's a committed community, it can be very, very supportive. So you've really you've really experienced all 6 of those empowerments in a very condensed fashion in this 44-day retreat.
And one of those, it was I guess I would have assumed it, but until doing this, I wouldn't have known it for sure. Is I was okay with my own company.
Yeah,
You know, I was okay with
yeah,
myself.
that's one of the biggest fears. Oh my God, I'm going to be alone for
Yeah,
a few days, much less a week,
yeah,
as you do with the sacred passage, much less a month or 44 days in your case.
yeah. And for people that might be considering a longer passage, 28 days, 44 days, 3 months, or whatever, I think the timing, I think, has a lot to do with expectations. If I had expected to end on day 28, the thought of adding a couple more weeks on would have been uh, tough. But with the expectations of 44 days, got right past 28 and went to 44. I think with the expectation 3 months, I could have been good with that
Yeah,
too.
no matter what, once you set your power of intent, then the process, the way of nature has basically a threefold or fivefold process. The first, the core part is the awareness training that occurs in the beginning.
Yep.
The sharing the practices, the principles, and the processes that help you go deeper and deeper and deeper and refine, clear away the complexity, the obscurations, help you reveal the underlying deep connection with the rest of life and the underlying power of your true nature. And then the middle part is the time spent in the AllOne time solo. And then the third part is coming out and doing the integration time, the sharing, and the tempering that
Yep.
allows you to go back and forth from the pristine condition of the AllOne time solo site back out into the world, rediscovering, oh, I've got a few contractions here,
Mm-hmm.
learning how to let go using the things you've learned.
Yep.
Then go back into the solitude to reconnect with what you gained during the deep time of grounding the entire process. Back and forth until the tempering is fairly complete. And then you're ready to go back to your home life and deal with airplanes,
Yeah.
cars, trains.
And I have appreciated going back out and revisiting my friends back out at the
tempering
site.
makes a big
It
difference. I
does,
think
yeah.
we're one of the few groups that actually has a very well-developed and clearly defined tempering process. So
Yeah,
you don't just lose the benefit of the retreat once it's over.
yeah, and it was especially powerful for me uh, during a week before I came out. I didn't know it, but my mother-in-law had passed,
Oh yeah,
and who was been living with us for the last 5 years, and
Yeah.
and bless my wife, she didn't want to interrupt my solitude.
Yep.
She didn't
Very
pass word
supportive.
on to me, and going back out to the site gave me an opportunity to sit in that sacred space and say my goodbyes and wishing her a smooth transition.
So you had some very powerful tempering
Yeah,
once you came out.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
amazing. Well, great to spend a little time with you, Pat.
Oh, my pleasure.
And share some of this with our audience on YouTube and the podcast.
And our dear friend Brad.
And thanks, Brad, for helping do the videoing and the audio recording. And I hope this gives people a little taste of the power of this way of nature process. I do believe that if enough people engage in this, it has the power to provide an experiential foundation for cultural transformation because it provides the basis for profound personal transformation. If this is practiced by groups of people, and over time, slowly, cultural transformation occurs. As one of the fathers of the environmental movement, I saw that happen when we first got that going in the 60s and early 70s. And I see an opportunity again to provide a much deeper foundation for cultural transformation that's more lasting and endurable than temporary laws, temporary policies that can come and go with a different group of politicians so easily.
Yeah.
So it's very important we establish a culture that is deeply connected and in harmonious relationship with the big family of life. And thank you for the sharing today because I think it helped establish how that can occur just through the experience of one man in a month and a half.
Yeah, and I would say it doesn't take a 44 day to start on that path. I'd say spend a day, learning some of the basic principles.
Exactly, the renewal programs, which are 1 or 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Many people come out from that profoundly changed and shifted.
Yeah.
So you're right. Doesn't necessarily, you don't get the idea you have to do a 44-day to realize some really profound transformation. It's each one of these levels of engagement work.
That's how I started 20 years ago with you.
Yeah.
Let's spend an afternoon together.
We've been at this for 20 years
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Amazing.
Peter Senge asked me to videotape you at the Sloan School once when you gave a talk there in
right?
town. Yeah, and, I said, there's something to be learning here.
Yeah, Peter's gone quite deep too. He's been a great student of the process, and Otto Sharma was engaged very much in the beginning too. So we've had some wonderful people. In fact, that 3-part process I mentioned, the awareness training in the beginning, going into the depth of the base of the deep connectivity to inner and outer true nature, and then integrating as you come out. Brian Arthur, another student of mine, took that, and out of it came something called, that now is being called by Otto and Peter and Joseph Jaworski, Theory U. We've added on a little bit more to that.
Yeah.
Brad and I have noticed that when people first start to sign on to do a sacred passage, for example, the first part of the process comes into play, which is, can I overcome all the reasons that are going to flood into my mind once I've set my intention to do this crazy thing? Then all the reasons why you shouldn't do it come flooding in. And that's your first test of whether you are really engaged with the full process. If you get through that first phase of, I can't do it because I've got problems with my girlfriend or boyfriend, I've got a dinner I've got to go to, I have to do a wedding, I commit to myself to, all these things that come up as excuses for not following through. But if you make it through all that and then you arrive, then you do the awareness training, you go through the deep immersion in the AllOne time solo, and you do the integration and tempering and sharing part coming out. Then the final part is something we call re-engaging the tempering process, maybe a month later, after people have gone back home. Get back together using things like Zoom, and we re-engage to the 5th part of the process, which is making sure that the tools and the processes that we've shared of how you integrate the process can be brought back into your normal lifestyle.
I'll take that as an invitation.
Okay.
About a month.
You got it. We'll do it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you knew, but 20-some years ago, I went with Otto to do his first seminar out in the Silicon Valley on Theory U.
Oh.
And as part of the process.
I was doing a great job in fleshing that out and bringing that.
Oh, yeah. And we had a fire.
Jaworski and Peter.
Oh, sure. And we had a fireside chat with this very engaging Irish fella and named Brian Arthur.
Oh, yeah. And did you know Brian has done 50 sacred passages or the equivalent, and a number of 3-week immersions, especially every summer?
Yeah. And
very deep.
Very powerful conversation, and how silence and stepping next to your problem can help solve the problem. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I was out in a 3-week training with you, and we were out on site in the teepee.
That was one of the advanced trainings?
Yeah. And I look up, and there's this guy coming into camp with a backpack on. I said, he looks familiar. And I went up and introduced myself. You look like a guy named Brian Arthur I saw at this thing with Otto Sharma. And he goes, oh, that was me. I remember that night.
Great.
And he came and sat down for 3 days with us.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, he went through the whole process of how our Theory U came into being during that time. It was a wonderful show.
Things are connected. I mean,
So, well, any last words? We really probably need to close for tonight. But any last recommendations for folks that are hearing this or seeing this for the first time?
Bottom line, one of my reasons for coming was I'm 72 years old. It's I'm looking at retirement and major shift in my life and how I spend my time and the like. And what am I going to do at that time? How about some quiet time to spend? answered, done and answered, and it's spiritual warriorship.
Yeah, beautiful.
Um,
Service.
yeah,
At the
service.
time
And secondly, do it. You know, you don't have to start with 44, like I said before.
Start
Get
with a 1 or 2 day.
absolutely, and if you're in the New England area, look
Look
us
this
up.
guy
We're,
up.
we're building
Yeah,
community there.
You can find this guy by going to
Wayofnature.com.
www.wayofnature.com
Wayofnaturene.com.
and also in wayofnature.com.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
He's on the main international site page.
absolutely.
As one of the lead guides.
Absolutely, and we're going to try to build a community practice there with support each other in moving forward the philosophies of Way of Nature in betterment of the world and for our own personal
Right.
personal development.
So
So
we need to move right ahead with what we're doing in our service area. If we're really going to address the climate and environmental
absolutely,
catastrophe and cataclysms that are happening right now.
yeah, with a compassionate heart.
With a very compassionate.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Pat.
Thank you, John.